Hello, and welcome to Transformation by Truth podcast, where the called become the chosen, and those who have been dedicated to serve the Most High receive the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as we progress our quest for holiness, perfection, and everlasting life. My name is D.L. Anderson. I'll be your tour guide. Let's get started with today's lesson. Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast in the quest for holiness, perfection, and everlasting life. Today, we have another brief word from your host and a reminder that exciting times are on the way. Today's podcast is entitled The Edification of the Invisible Body, Part 1. Let us therefore pursue the things which make for peace, and things wherewith one may edify another. Romans 14:19. Podcast objectives are: reveal why those doing the true work of the ministry are few, even though the harvest is great. Reveal one of the greatest tragedies of all time, and reveal the key that unlocks the full potential of ministry. Now, our first section is entitled A Ripe Harvest with Few Workers. As you know, the last 4 podcasts in this series have been dedicated to analyzing the work of the ministry. And rightfully so, for the work of any given minister is the focal phase of the ministry he or she has been called to and the office they have been assigned. As you recall, the fundamental phase of ministry is the perfection of the set-apart ones. This is why I have repeatedly asked you to revisit the podcast on perfection as you have time, for perfection is the foundation of the ministry. Here's a question. What is the third and final degree of ministry? We have 3 hints. Hint 1, it is a critical degree. Hint 2, it is found in Ephesians 4:12. And hint 3, it is the title of this podcast. The answer, the edification of the invisible body of Yahushua, Messiah. As you can see by the image to the right, the spiritual model of ministry is a cycle. The perfection of the set-apart ones leads to the work of the ministry, which leads to the edification of the body, which leads back to the perfection of the set-apart ones. Allow me to further explain. Perfection qualifies us as ministers, i.e., as you go on to perfection, as the word of truth commands, you will reach a spiritual plane where you achieve a fundamental mastery of the Father's will. At this juncture, you will also obtain the dominion required to bind and to loosen in accordance with the Father's will. This milestone is conclusive evidence that you have fulfilled all the requirements on ministry. At this juncture, you will be elevated by Elohim to an office. Trust me, the harvest is ripe, but those who are doing the true work of the ministry are few. Therefore, the Father will elevate you if you are qualified. Luke 10:2 reveals, the harvest indeed is great, but the workers are few. Therefore, Pray the master of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest. My dear friends, this call still stands today. We must pray at all times that the Father sends workers into his harvest. For although the religious world is filled with billions of actors, those who are truly doing the work of the ministry are few. Now, the title of our next section is One of the Greatest Tragedies. The fact that the free ministers in our world are so few and far in between is one of the greatest tragedies of all time. It is for the following reason, which I will offer as an interest point. Consider it carefully. The work of the ministry leads to the edification of the invisible body of Yahushua Messiah. And this critical phase of ministry is the only juncture where spiritual increase is realized, i.e., the combination of progress and growth. Ergo, where there is no edification, there is no ministry. All you have are men and women engaging themselves in actions that have no eternal value, all of whom will have somewhat of a rude awakening at the judgment. We launched this podcast in December 2021. Since that time, I have posted more than 70 lessons and shared tens of interest points, all of which possess a high spiritual weight. Believe me when I say, of all the interest points I have shared with you thus far, this one is one of the most critical of them all. So please pay very close attention as I reveal why this is the case, and do reach out if you have questions. Let's begin with a re-eval of ministry, i.e., ministry is the vehicle by which those of us who are under the renewed covenant are qualified to inherit everlasting life. It is the ship that carries us through life's tumultuous seas. The key here is that the seas are indeed tumultuous. Life, my friends, is a painful experience, whether you are in the way of holiness or not. By the Spirit, you will surely overcome, but that does not discount all you must go through to overcome. Here's a question. If ministry is the ship designed to carry you through life's troubled seas, how well will you fare if the ship is defective? The answer, you will not fare well at all unless you find another ship that is not defective to carry you through. Let me be clear. When I say defective, I am not speaking to the lowest level of ministry and those churches marred by various types of illicit sin. On the contrary, I am speaking to every assembly that is not a perfection ministry. Remember, perfection is the foundation of the ministry. It is the fundamental characteristic of those who are being set apart. Thus, we conclude, and I will say it again, where there is no perfection, there is no ministry. We know this because false ministries do not have the dominion to defeat the kingdom of darkness. As the kingdom of heaven is victorious, it is impossible for any man to minister on its behalf if he does not have the dominion to be victorious. Then again, this dominion cannot be achieved outside of the spiritual model of perfection. This is precisely why Yahushua Messiah commanded us, saying, "Be perfect as your Father in the heavens is perfect." See, although many don't realize it, perfection is the source of our strength. And as you know from our most recent podcast, only the strong are going to make it. Only the strong are going to win. And the fact that many honest believers are not readily given the opportunity to be made strong is, again, in my estimation, one of the greatest tragedies of all time. Now, our next section is entitled "The Key That Unlocks the Full Potential of Ministry." On the other hand, and praise be to Elohim, not every ship battling the storms of life is defective. My dear friends, perfection ministries do exist. You are witnessing one even now. From the beginning until now, and until I die, I have and will champion the spiritual model of perfection and its relationship with the way of holiness and the prize of everlasting life. That's a fact. Perhaps now you are beginning to see why the Spirit has led me to preach and teach perfection. Truly, it is not to be controversial or to waste my time taking cheap shots at all the failed ministries in the religious circuit and all the spiritual casualties in their wake. On the contrary, perfection is the single spiritual thread that facilitates the work of the ministry and the ensuing critical phenomenon of edification, without which there is no unity, without which there is no ministry. Seeing as you are clearly in a perfection ministry and you understand what the work of the ministry is, it is time for you to understand the critical piece of this puzzle. It is time for you to understand the edification of the invisible body of Yahushua Messiah and how it is the key that unlocks the full potential of ministry. We'll begin executing a deep dive into this critical model in the next podcast in this series. What I want you to take away from this podcast is this: another key interest point you must consider faithfully. Edification can only be achieved in a perfection ministry. That is, a ministry led by men and women who have been spiritually qualified to work on behalf of the kingdom of heaven and have the power to edify you. Now, here is the final word. If the ministers in your assembly have not been qualified, then you will not be edified. And thus, the call to holiness, perfection, and everlasting life persists. For this is the only path we have been given in which we can be edified. And without this edification, we will not be saved. Now, here is the assignment for today. As you have time, please go back and review all the podcasts I have posted thus far to aid you as you prepare for the quest ahead. As always, please reach out to me directly if you have any questions. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, The Edification of the Invisible Body, Part 1. And the next podcast is The Edification of the Invisible Body, Part 2. I'll post it on Friday. Until then, continue to be led by the set-apart spirit, and I promise you, I will too. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Remember to tune in with us every Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And if you haven't already, visit us at www.pinnacleofholiness.com and make sure you sign up to join the quest for holiness, perfection, and everlasting life 2022.